Hi, and welcome to the Living Tantra podcast. Today, I am here with a very, very dear friend and a colleague who I deeply respect, Matt Sturm. Matt is the founder of the Living Cosmos Mystery School. He's a guide for transformational experiences, has studied with a diverse array of traditions, and his passion is to share in a way that's accessible, experiential, and empowering. His background spans Hatha Yoga, Tibetan Buddhism, somatic psychotherapy, and sacred sexuality, and rituals for extended states of consciousness. Matt's approach is all about slowing down, bringing awareness into the body, and living from the wisdom of our hearts. So, for those of you that remember, Matt was a guest a few months ago, and we got incredible feedback on his interview. He is such a living, walking wealth of direct transmission from what I believe is current consciousness as it's presenting in now time in an embodied human being. So the topic for today is the evolution of creative freedom. And yeah, I'm gonna just let you take it from there, Matt.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, wow. I so appreciate all the kind words, and thank you for inviting me back on. It's such an honor and just a blessing to get to be here and to get to share with you. So thank you. So yeah, I wanted to come on and share about the evolution of creative freedom because it kind of emerged through the studies that I've been doing as a really important framework to understand what we're doing as humans and what consciousness is doing through us as humans. And so the evolution of creative freedom, what I want to do is just kind of be in a curious exploration together with you as we look at this topic. And I want to go all the way back and start at the beginning, like the beginning, and talk about how the cosmos, how the universe and all aspects of the universe have been evolving. And the evolution has taken different steps, and we'll get to humans and what they do, but to really fully understand it, we need to look at the full picture. So let's just play and let's just explore together, okay? Cool. So within the first 3 minutes of the universe coming into being from the Big Bang, we had all of the space, we had all of the matter and energy in the form of protons and neutrons, electrons, and a handful of other particles. We had all of the forces, strong, weak, the nuclear, electromagnetic, and gravitational force. And we had all the constants, like the speed of light is a constant. So that was kind of like all the givens were in place. And the evolution took us from a collection of protons and neutrons and electrons in space to 13.7 billion years later, you and me and mantis shrimp and chat GPT and all of these amazing things that are basically still protons and neutrons and electrons arranging themselves in different ways. So it's an amazing, amazing feat from that perspective that the universe was set in motion and then organized itself, evolved into what we see today. And how did that happen? What occurred along the way that we ended up here and now? So there's a fundamental drive, which has been called various things by different philosophers, but I'll use the term Eros. Eros is the drive of the universe to move towards greater degrees of complexity and wholeness. We're reaching up to become something more. So on the physical level, which is where the universe began, just particles in space, protons and electrons, the universe cooled and then they captured each other into the first atoms, hydrogen and helium. And then those collected together into stars. And inside of stars, we fused together some of the heavier elements all the way up to oxygen. And that is the first complexification of the universe. We have just basic matter coming together into these central units of stars, and the building blocks of matter coming into more complex atoms. So then the stars, some of them turn into black holes, some of them kind of peter out, but some of these stars go into supernova explosions where they collapse down under their own weight, and then the strong nuclear force blasts them back out. And in that explosion, all of the heavier elements, all the way up to uranium and plutonium, get created. And so there's an even more complex formation that matter is taking. And at the same time, the stars are collecting into galaxies, and the galaxies are collecting into superclusters of galaxies. And so we see the whole universe starting to striate, to form, to differentiate. And so this is the ongoing creative evolution of matter on the physical material level. So, we go through a few generations of stars collapsing and exploding and spewing out heavier elements, and eventually we get to the formation of the Milky Way galaxy. There's a cloud disk that starts to concrete into itself, and we get the sun, we get the earth, and the earth has iron and nickel and calcium and all of these heavier atoms that we need in order for life to emerge. So here we are, we're on this planet Earth, orbiting a sun. We have liquid water, and about 3 billion years ago, we have the emergence of life. So all of this Eros of physical matter had to work through its process to get to the place where it was complex and whole enough, where it was intricate enough, that then we could have the conditions for a new order of magnitude of creation to emerge, which is organic biological life. You still with me?
Totally.
Great.
Yeah, I'm making all kinds of parallels, but I'm going to let you finish first before I interject anything.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going to keep going. So biological life has its own evolution, but most importantly, it represents a fundamentally different type of evolution than the type of evolution that physical matter is undergoing. Biological life is self-replicating. We have DNA, we have RNA, so that this organism creates the conditions where this organism can then happen again, it reproduces. And life does a whole bunch of other amazing things. Life is homeostatic. It takes in material and it sends out material in a way that regulates its environment. Life also collects into populations of organisms that both compete and that work together, that cooperate. All of these levels of complexity are not seen by purely physical systems. So living systems are doing something different.
Living systems are doing something different.
Right. They represent a layer of complexity and of wholeness that physical matter alone doesn't achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So the evolutionary process is a different order of magnitude. It's a different, it sits on top of the evolution of physical matter, but it's something new. Yes. Biological evolution. So in the 20th century, systems theorists started to look at what makes life different. And they came up with, one of the guys in the 1970s came up with this term, autopoietic, autopoiesis, to describe what makes biological life unique. So poiesis is a Greek term. It comes from a Greek word, which is the same root as poetry. Auto means self. So the fundamental characteristic of life, of biological life, is that it is self-creative. Life creates the conditions that are conducive to life. Right, cool. And this is amazing. This is fascinating. So physical matter is, we could say, poetic, to follow the analogy. It exists in a process of poiesis, but it's just kind of paint on a canvas. It's swirling galaxies, right? Life, however, is self-creative. I am sustaining my environment, I'm reproducing, I'm passing on my genes, and so the creation of life is more life. One of the things that really drove this home for me is scientists were trying to understand how and why, over the course of the last 3 or 4 billion years that life has been on Earth, the brightness of the sun has increased by 30%. So the sun has gotten hotter just through the natural life cycle of the sun. Over the course of that entire time, somehow, the Earth has maintained liquid water, even though our energy source got 30% brighter and hotter. Like, how do we explain this? Well, that was one of the insights that led to the Gaia hypothesis, that the planet Earth is a living, homeostatic, self-creative entity, an organism. That the biosphere, that all of the living matter on this planet, together with the physical processes of the oceans and the clouds, are self-sustaining. They adjust as the sun gets brighter so that they stay within their window of livable conditions. We stay. Yeah. Still with
So
me?
that has an interconnectivity too, an interrelationality.
Yes. So there is no such thing as a completely isolated organism. Organisms create more of the same organisms, and organisms always exist in an ecosystem. And the largest ecosystem that we have is this planet. Yeah. And so the life system of this planet is homeostatic. It's self-regulating.
Mhm.
Cool, right?
Yeah.
So that it's like the nature of evolution, what the universe, what the cosmos is doing through life, is creating a self-regulating, self-propagating system.
Are you including consciousness in that evolution as well?
So that's the next step that we're about to take. So we can say that there's this term, pan-experientialism, that every external phenomenon has an internal experiential component. So protons are in some ways not aware, but they're impacted by the electrons that are around them. They respond to them. So you could say they're prehensive. And when we get to biological life, basic single-celled organisms are responsive to their environment. And as life becomes more and more complex, this awareness of the environment becomes also more nuanced and complex. And so the awareness, there's no line where we could say, here's where internal awareness stops, or here's where consciousness stops. But when we talk about consciousness, we're usually talking about human consciousness. And there is something fundamentally new and different that human consciousness is doing. And so that's our next step. So from the physical to the biological, now to human consciousness in this unfolding process of evolution. So Teilhard de Chardin called it the point of reflection. He said, the thing that is unique about humans is that we have an I, not an eyeball, but the letter I, an ego, an awareness that is aware of itself, self-reflexive awareness. I'm a me, and I know that I'm a me. You're a you, and you know that you're a you. This is what makes human consciousness unique. And it's fundamentally different from anything that the biological systems have produced up until this point, so far as we know. So just like DNA is fascinating. So DNA is basically a recipe book that includes the recipe for itself. This DNA strand is a code that tells its living system how to make more of this code. So it's recursive, it's self-referential. And that's part of the magic of biology. The magic of human consciousness is that we are self-referential, not on a chemical level, but on a level of awareness, a level of our consciousness. So I'm able to see that I am a me. The famous line from Descartes, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Thinking is an act of being. It's a real thing. So this awareness that we hold, this consciousness that we hold, has somehow lifted and individuated from the biological and physical matrix that supports it. Cool. So it turns out that there are two aspects of human consciousness, not just one, that we care about and that are undergoing evolution. First aspect we could call our psyche. It's everybody's interior experience. It includes my egoic awareness, it includes my dreams, my unconscious, all of these things that I have access to inside of me. But there's another aspect of human consciousness which is evolving, which is our culture. And the culture is not held within any individual human. The culture is a collective, it's an interweaving of consciousness that's held through relationships, through language, through the shared symbols that we all agreed this means this thing. So culture is also evolving, and there's different cultures that have developed just as there's different psyches within each individual. So we say that the psyche is subjective. My inner realm is not objective. You can't put a ruler on it and measure it. It's subjective, it's qualitative. Culture is intersubjective. It's held between all of us subjects. And so we as a group of humans, as a society, create culture, or the culture evolves along with us.
Culture influences psyche, psyche influences culture.
Yeah, right. Because they evolve together, it makes sense to talk about them together, but it's important just to see that there's two different aspects that are interrelated, but also unique happening with humans. Okay. So then, if living systems, if biological life is autopoietic, and that separates it from the poiesis of physical systems, then what can we say about human consciousness? I'm making the claim that it's something unique. It's an order of magnitude new. And for me, and this is part of the new layer that I want to bring out into the world, it's that the nature of human consciousness is that it moves towards creative freedom. It is creatively self-liberating. And so now we can kind of unpack that a little bit more. Yeah. The term that I pulled through, it was given to me in a dream, is eleutheropoiesis. Eleuthero is a Greek word, which means freedom or liberty. And poiesis, again, is creation. It's poetic. So we have physical systems are in a process of poiesis. Biological systems are in a process of autopoiesis, of self-creation. Human systems are in a process of freedom creating, of self-liberating.
Wow.
Okay. So the way that I understand this, or the way that it shows up for me as I've been exploring it, is humans evolve through, our consciousness evolves through a series of paradigms. All the way back, we were in kind of an undifferentiated connection with nature. And over time, our sense of our sense of self differentiated from the natural environment. We formed tribes, we formed societies, and then we, entered the rational mind. We said, I think, therefore I am. I can understand the universe logically. Each one of these is a different paradigm, different worldview. It's a different set of values, assumptions, beliefs, and identities that make sense of the world. And so I'm drawing on integral philosophy here. So there's basically three main paradigms in our culture today. One is, you would call it mythic or traditional, and it's the worldview that there is a transcendent divine other, whether that's Muhammad, whether that's Jesus, whether that's Buddha, and that transcendent other has a message of salvation for us, the chosen people. If we follow that message, then we'll reach salvation, which is our own type of liberation. We're working towards the heavenly realm, towards nirvana, and that's our picture of liberation. Next paradigm that emerged from humanity after that is, we would call it the Enlightenment age, or scientific materialism, or the rational mind. And that is the ability to understand the natural world through reason and logic. To say, okay, there are these rigorous structures which describe how the world works. And I can understand that, and I can even predict that sometimes. Wow. So this thing in here has this capacity to understand. And from that is like an amazing amount of liberative qualities that humanity underwent when we really brought the rational mind into our culture. The rise of democracy. We said every single human has this rational mind, and with that becomes inalienable human rights. We have a right to representative government. We have a right to food, shelter, water, education, things like that. We don't want to enslave each other, because I recognize that each one of these other people is a human with a rational capacity to see beauty, to feel happiness. So the Enlightenment age brought with it an incredible amount of new freedoms. We worked towards abolishing slavery, and to a large extent, we've massively shifted that. We brought in democracy. We brought in what's known as modern medicine and economics. And with modern economics was a massive lifting in quality of life for everybody who participated in that system. So that's the type of liberation that comes with the emergence of the rational mind. I want to be free to follow my dreams, to live a good life, and to have this material wealth. Now that brought along with it a whole bunch of problems, just like, the monotheistic mythic traditional paradigm has its own set of problems, namely that they're happy to kill or persecute or convert anybody who's a non-believer. That's kind of a problem for a world culture. The problems with the rational worldview is consumerism, capitalism, this extractive basically greed that wants to consume all that it can. So it's a set of problems that goes along with a new worldview, a new perspective on what's important. So I said there's three main paradigms in our culture today. The third paradigm we could call plural or postmodern. So the level of freedom that emerged with postmodernism is the recognition that I am embedded in my culture, and my culture carries biases. It has its own perspectives and prejudices that are invisible to me until I can start to see myself embedded within my culture. And also that my ego has this natural quality of wanting to be defensive, wanting to protect its own interests. We call this privilege. I want to privilege myself. So with this new layer of complexity, this new holistic worldview that emerges and postmodernism is the recognition that I could be free from those biases, that we could live in a culture, in a society that is also free of those biases. With postmodernism, which first began to emerge in the 1960s, we have women's rights, we have Black rights, we have the environmental movement, and basically deconstructionism, this idea that we can pull apart the socially conditioned pieces of identities and frameworks of our society that are not serving us, so that we could be more free, that we could be more equal.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Just pausing here, letting that kind of sink in a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's more.
Right, because in my experience, I can feel myself, you're taking me through the different phases of evolution, and I keep want to go, I want to go further.
Yeah, right. If I just jump to the head, to the front, to the most advanced, most spiritual, evolved layer, we wouldn't fully appreciate the journey.
Exactly.
Yeah. And by looking, at the whole journey, we start to see, whoa, this is what evolution is doing. This is what the cosmos is doing through us.
Yes, and in you laying it out, I can feel in myself why it didn't stop there. I can feel
Right, totally. There's more.
my own errors of yes.
Right. There's more. Totally. And one of the amazing things about evolution is we don't have a reason to believe it's ever going to stop. We don't have a reason to believe that this is the end all be all of human civilization and advancement, or even we take it a step out, the advancement of the cosmos of existence as a whole, that it's ever going to, that humans are the pinnacle, that we're going to be the end point. Mm-hmm. But so anyway, integral philosophy says that after postmodern, there's another worldview, another paradigm which is emerging. They call it integral. And so the problems of postmodernism is that we're deconstructing all of these socially conditioned aspects of ourselves, of our society, pulling away all the different parts. And we can deconstruct all the way down to nothingness, to total chaos, to meaninglessness, to nihilism. And there can be a profound disorientation of like, okay, if all perspectives are valid, then there's no one right view. It's all relative. Then where is the meaning in that? And this is one of the problems that is raised by the postmodern paradigm. Where is the meaning and who am I once I pulled everything apart? So then the integral paradigm is emerging to the extent that it can address that problem. And what the integral paradigm brings is a return to meaning and a return to self. And it does this through wholeness. The core value of integral is wholeness. I see myself as a whole self, not a collection of all these different wounded parts. There's a core me here. And I see the natural world as an interlocking of all of these different systems into a unitive whole. Gaia. I see the cosmos as a unitive whole, cosmocentric. I'm one part, and I'm part of this larger whole. But that whole is also a part, which is a part of a larger whole. And we could go down in the same way. So we see the interrelationship of parts and wholes in a unified context. So what integral brings is the freedom to self-actualize. Integral brings the freedom to self-actualize. So I'm just going to place that.
You said you're going to place that.
And then we'll come back to it
Okay.
in just like 1 minute. So I want to tackle this through looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you heard of this? It's usually pictured as a pyramid. Yeah. So Maslow was a psychologist, and his observation was that people move through addressing different needs. There's foundational needs, and once we get those foundational needs met, then we become free to address more refined needs, more advanced needs. But unless I get the foundation, I can't work at a higher level. So it's a hierarchy. So the need at the mythic traditional paradigm is belonging. Maslow has a layer called belonging. We need to belong. That's what's happening at that paradigm, the mythic traditional paradigm. It's all about who am I in my group? What does our group believe? What are we doing together? The need at the rational level, at the rational paradigm, is self-esteem. It's about being all I can be. It's about climbing the corporate ladder to get to the top. It's about learning all of the processes to become an expert. It's about achievement. So we call it self-esteem needs. And also recognition externally that I'm doing a good job, I'm performing well. The needs at the plural or postmodern paradigm are cognitive needs. They're about being sensitive to the experience of others. Cognitive needs are recognizing that my ego is embedded in these culturally conditioned systems, and I'm separating myself out from that. I have a need to kind of pull away from the cultural conditioning over there. And then I go in and I feel. And that is one of the main things that the postmodern paradigm is great at. It's feeling and recognizing the feelings of other people. It's the need that's being met. Rational mind, feelings just get in the way. Postmodern, no, we want the feelings. Let's make space for them now. So at every one of those steps, we have a need from. We're liberating from some type of obscuration or oppression. We're trying to liberate from the bonds that hold us. When we get to integral, it's a giant leap. And that giant leap is the freedom to. It's no longer a need that's trying to be met. The freedom to self-actualize, the freedom to become all of me. And the freedom for the system that I'm embedded in to become all of itself.
The freedom for wholeness. Yeah.
Freedom of wholeness. Exactly. Yes. So the primary focus at integral is not freedom from something which is holding us back or pushing us down. It's the freedom now to expand, to become. And that's the creative expression of like, how many different colors can I paint myself now? How many different realms can I go explore and expand into? Yeah.
How
And
many
so,
different powers are part of my human experience? Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
totally.
The fullest spectrum, right?
Right. Hmm. And through that exploration, we create and we discover purpose and meaning. And that purpose and meaning is what gets lost at the postmodern paradigm. So now we have a return to purpose and meaning. We also have a return to spirituality. And we see that there is something bigger than my egoic self happening here. That something bigger, we could call it, the great web of life has its own intelligence, or the soma of my body has its own intelligence. And we start to look at these different religious and spiritual traditions that at the rational level, we were rightfully saying, no, these are not appropriate. We're pushing them away. They're ignorant, they're wrong, they're backworldly. Now we're solid enough in ourselves and we're able to expand beyond our individual worldview to see that there's something bigger, spirit, moving through us. We start to tap into that and connect to that so that the Tantra comes back in.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Define
Mm-hmm.
Tantra. Define Tantra in this sense of using it.
In this sense of using it, Tantra is the recognition that everything in this life is sacred.
Tantra is the recognition that everything in this life is sacred.
Yeah. As my worldview, as I develop, as I evolve, and my worldview becomes more complex, becomes more holistic, I begin to access different states of consciousness. I have different spiritual or religious experiences. And so I start to interweave, to incorporate that into my reality picture, how I experience myself in this reality that I'm in. So Tantra is the recognition that there is a consciousness which is bigger than me, bigger than my egoic self, and it permeates through different levels of reality, through different states of consciousness, and that there's a spiritual path that I can then move on and develop.
So if everything in this life is sacred,
Mm-hmm.
what is that implying?
So that's a great question. The first answer that I want to give is the inherent value, like sacred as precious, of everything. To say that everything is sacred is to also, the way that I'm using it is to also include the mundane and the profane. It's not to say that this over here is sacred as opposed to the profane, the not sacred over here. Everything in sacred means that everything is precious.
So in a sense, Tantra is a higher octave echo of this earth as, I forget how you described it, but every part is essential, integral.
Every part is essential, yes. So the physical systems form the foundation for the biological systems. The biological system says the physical systems, you're wrong, you're old, you're backwards, go away. Biological systems cut off their own legs, so to speak. It's the same thing culturally for us. I can't point to people living in monotheistic religion and say, you're wrong, you're backwards, you got it. I recognize that this is an important part of the development of humanity. People happen to be there, people are valuable, and they're carrying consciousness at a certain level of development. And actually, integral needs that level of development to still be here in the world. But what we want is for that layer of humanity to be healthy. We want it to be resourced. We want it to act in ways that are respectful of life. The more that we make it wrong, the more that we push it to extremes, to fundamentalism. So by just like working with my internal parts, the more that I make my internal parts wrong, the more I exile those parts, and then they have to come take their revenge. I act out. So all of it sacred means that every layer of development has its own place, its own intelligence, and every layer is part of this wholeness in which we find ourselves.
Mm.
So then the folks at integral level, at the integral paradigm, get really excited about evolution, which is what I'm talking about. How do we evolve ourselves? How do we create the systems that evolve our culture? How do we create conveyor belts to help people work their way through? Now, there's one extra piece that I want to add on here. So, integral estimates vary, but somewhere around 10% of the world population is able to see through the integral paradigm, gets the integral worldview. The next layer above that is called high integral, and it's less than 1%. And as I've been exploring what even is high integral, because it's emerging now, we're laying down the framework, the morphogenic fields for what this is now. Same with integral, it's still being put into the world. So integral is all about evolution. High integral is all about compassion.
Okay, will you define compassion here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So at high integral, I take even another step back from my egoic perspective, from my self-centered, egocentric perspective, into a more world-centric, cosmocentric, spiritual-centric perspective. From this larger perspective, I recognize that what Matt, personality me, is trying to do is tiny compared to life and spirit. And so first off, compassion is once I see that there's a one, there's a unity of consciousness which moves through all of us. There's spirit, call it Buddha nature, you can call it God, whatever your perspective is, there's one consciousness. Then I see that consciousness in every being. And compassion is that recognition of the one light that animates all of us.
Mm. Is there, from where you're speaking from, is there a relationship to that light, passion, Eros?
Yeah, oh, beautiful. So, I love this question. Yes, Eros is our natural longing for that one light. We want to move towards wholeness.
Yeah.
Compassion could also be called agape. And it's moving from wholeness, from the one, down to embrace the many. Eros, evolution, reaches up. Compassion embraces down.
Hold on, just let's sit with that for a minute.
Uh-huh.
And so the way you're articulating Eros, because you brought it in the very beginning, it is the fundamental mechanism of evolution, of the
Yes.
of evolution through us,
Mm-hmm.
as us, right?
Right.
Compassion is evolutionarily something that came in much, much later. to embrace.
Yeah. So Buddha nature, or God, or spirit, the unmanifest, pure consciousness, I amness,
Yeah.
has never not been. It's timeless. From the moment of the Big Bang through now, it's always present, it's ever present. That consciousness has always been reaching down to embrace the parts of the universe and draw them up. It's doing it with us right now. Spirit's reaching down and saying, come. And that's compassion from above. We as humans can practice compassion towards other beings also once we find wholeness within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the evolutionary drive from the parts towards the whole has always been here. We've always been from parts saying, yes, I want more, like the plant reaching towards the sun. But the sun has always been shining and saying, come hither. There has never not been agape, the spirit reaching down and drawing us up.
However, it's later in evolution that free will, our I and our choosing, to make conscious that engagement or that.
Right. Yes. So humans are figuring it out and we're developing it. And when we look at the people who have really gone deep on the spiritual path, like the sages or the mystics or the saints, they pretty uniformly come to compassion, to equanimity. And that's where we as a collective are headed as we go through our own evolution, is towards more equanimity, towards more compassion. So at the integral level, we're saying, hey, everybody, check this out. We can all evolve together. At high integral, I get even more out of the way and I say, oh, the universe is evolving and I can trust in the perfection of that. And I can see the inherent goodness, the rightness of everybody exactly where they are on their path. And that is compassion.
Mm. So compassion, the way you're describing it, Tantra is also compassion.
Yes.
Recognizing the inherent goodness of everyone where they're at and seeing the sacredness of everything in life.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So then if we come back to this term, eleutheropoiesis, freedom or liberty creation, the drive of human consciousness by its nature is to move towards liberation. And now I'm including spiritual liberation, realization here. At integral level, it's the freedom to self-actualize. At high integral, it's the freedom as the beingness of what and who I am. For me personally, for all of humanity, for all of existence, the freedom of the universe to exist in its perfection, with all of its imperfections and suffering in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so loving.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm left with.
Yeah. And beautiful.
Yeah. And we're inherently a part of this, whether we choose to know it or not.
We couldn't not be a part of it. Yeah.
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 So my impulse is to want to give people deeper entry or something they can take away.
Mm-hmm.
For their own more direct experience of this.
Yeah. So much of what I'm sharing here, I have my own words and my own language, but much of this comes from a guy named Ken Wilber. And he's amazing for putting together this whole system. It's truly a gift. He made the statement that studying consciousness is psychoactive. So by learning about these different paradigms and the evolutionary process, we expand our own awareness of what's possible. We see the path and then we start to reach into it and feel into it. And through that, our awareness expands and our consciousness becomes more complex and whole. So just by going through this journey that we took, we're walking the path of stimulating our own growth of consciousness.
Mm. Yeah, so beautiful. That transition is so strong.
Yeah. And to align to the worldview of high integral, it's allowing the perfection of the unfolding. That's the place. Perfection of my own unfolding and everybody, everything around me. And that takes an incredible amount of trust.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanna give a human example of this. Can
Sure.
you share how in your life how that translates? What that looks like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man. I'm a very motivated human being. I do a lot of practices. I'm dedicated, and I want to get there. And I want to heal my stuff, and I want to expand my consciousness. Right. But the end goal is that I'm gonna be the one who is healed, who is realized or enlightened. I'm gonna get there, right? And so Chogyam Trungpa calls this spiritual materialism, right? The ego co-opts the spiritual path for its own self-perfection project. So the eleutherpoiesis at high integral is to recognize that and take a step back and go, whoa, okay. It's all unfolding in its own perfection. It doesn't mean don't show up and do my practices. But the idea that I'm the one who's going to get them, who's going to achieve them, that's the place where I'm attached. That's my own agenda, which is causing me suffering. And so stepping back and allowing my path to unfold, allowing my shadows and my wounds to be here, allowing me to not get it exactly right, that is the path unfolding. That is the letting go, the surrender.
And so on that level, engaging in practice becomes a way for us simply to show up for ourselves as opposed to changing what we don't like or what's wrong and what.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I forget who said this, but I read this somewhere from a Tibetan author who said that first we wait for our authentic enthusiasm for the practice. If we lose that, then we go back and we wait before you do any of these other things. Right?
You know, that brings me back to an earlier point in our conversation about Tantra. And Tantra recognizing that everything in life is sacred. And how do we deem or recognize that something is sacred? We create space. We are simply present with it in an allowance that enables an emergence in present time space of our experience, as opposed to imposing.
Right. Yes. It's the judgment which separates. And when we stop judging, we stop separating. And through that, through the letting go of the judgments, we step into the sacred world. The world has always been sacred, but we get to participate in it. And part of that is recognizing the sacredness within myself. I can't be a profane being in a sacred world. That's not everything is sacred. So I have to do the forgiveness internally, release the self-judgments, and the forgiveness externally, release the external judgments and grudges, blame. And through that release, the sacred world unfolds itself within me and without me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. I want to give you an opportunity to wrap
Cool.
all of this up. Yeah.
Okay. I guess to wrap this up, the final little thing is like, what does freedom, what does liberation actually mean? And from different worldviews, from different perspectives, freedom is different. So like I said, at the lower end of the spectrum, at the earlier layers of development, it's freedom from the things that bind me, freedom from my suffering, freedom from the needs that are not being met, freedom to get my needs met. And we get to integral, and it's freedom to self-actualize. But it's still centered on a more expansive, more inclusive self. But as we progress further and further down, we release that self. It's not that we kill our ego or deny the ego. It's that the ego comes into service of this larger tapestry of life. So it includes the ego. So what does freedom mean from a trans-egoic perspective? If I'm not free to become the most me anymore, and my free will is stepping into, is braiding together with the will of the cosmos, then what is that freedom? It's no longer a personal freedom. It's now a transpersonal freedom of the universe, of the cosmos, to be in the creative advance into novelty, to be in that poetic, self-creating, self-expressing dance. It's always unfolding. That's freedom.
And so freedom is inherent.
Yes, it is. But freedom is experienced differently from different developmental levels.
Yes.
We are never not free. Freedom is our true nature. It's our core. It's our essence. And as I evolve and develop, what freedom is also develops and changes. Freedom becomes more free.
Free freedom. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you for crunching up the entire evolution of freedom
My
into a
pleasure.
couple of bite-sized pieces carried with profound transmission and, yeah, embodied experience. Yeah. Matt, I would love to give you an opportunity to talk about, I know you have free for the video series coming up that's free. And
Yes.
then also a course starting, and you just are such a wealth of grounded, progressive information and skill in facilitating others that I want people to know how they can find you and get more.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So coming up soon, I have 4 successive Wednesdays. I will be doing a free Zoom transmission. The series is called This is Consciousness. And the eleutheropoiesis that we talked about here, it's included in some of it, but it's not actually any of the main topics. So this is good. But basically, what we've been doing today is studying consciousness. And it's like amazing. I'm so passionate about it. So I'm taking what I'm passionate about and I'm distilling it into 4 lectures. I'm not just going to be talking, we're going to be experiencing them together. So those are a free gift to anybody who wants to explore. They are also the foundation, like if I were to have this be the first module in the mystery school course that's going to start in the middle of March. It's what I would want everybody to know in order to then do this initiation. And the initiation is to understanding our place in the cosmos. It's called the Lightning Path, and it's a 6-month course.
And what can people expect from this course, or who might be drawn to it?
Anybody who is feeling the call, feeling the pull, that longing to step into a new version of themselves. And it's really a step into the mystery. This is a mystery school that we're doing here. We don't know, but we're going to explore, like we did today, these realms of consciousness so that a new me can emerge. So if you're feeling like it's time, I've been in this identity, in this world situation long enough, and I'm ready to spread my wings and grow into something more, that's the feeling of people who are going to be right for this course.
Awesome. And what modalities will you use in the course?
So in this course, we work with a tarot deck, which you know well, called Tarot of the Spirit, and is created by one of my teachers. The tarot is basically a book of archetypes. And each archetype, each card, can be understood as an initiation. So we're going to be going through part of the tarot deck, learning about the structure of it, how it's related to Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, how it's related to Jewish mysticism called Kabbalah, and how it's related to Pythagorean number mysticism. So the Pythagoreans saw each number as kind of its own demigod, as a divine being, which when we understand them, lays out the pattern of the universe. So we're going to be exploring the patterns of the universe and of self.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So all the links for the free video series, the Lightning Path course, and also Matt's general website will be below in notes.
Perfect.
You know where to find him. Matt, thank you so much. It's always so enjoyable for me to sit here and interview you and hear you expound on what you've been bringing through in your laboratory and be in the splash zone of all of it and how it catalyzes me, literally.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Catherine. It's such a pleasure. And it's always just a joy to get to sit here and to be in the jam with you. I love it.
Yay. Okay, Matt, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next time.